First things first, as always, patreon.com/Genesis of Androzani if you'd like to support us. Thank you so very much. There's some rewards for you if you do it, and there will be more down the line once we get a bit more free time not doing the advent calendar. But yes, thank you so much for watching, subscribing, commenting, liking, everything.
Of course, we're near the end of the advent calendar because this is day 24. Christmas Eve. And what better way to celebrate the Christmas spirit by reviewing a Christmas special?
Yes, a Christmas special. I'm sure that perked all of your interests. Now,
But maybe not the one you're thinking.
we are talking about the Chimes of Midnight. A big Finnish production which was released in June of 2003, I believe.
I think it was
2002.
2002. I know it was filmed in 2001.
Well, it was recorded in 2001 and released at some point between the dawn of time and now. Excuse me. I'm a little bit under the weather, but I will
It was
push through.
during the wilderness years.
Yeah. Yes. But yes, it's starring Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, and it is written by the incomparable Rob Shearman. Connor, what were your first impressions and initial thoughts of the Chimes of Midnight?
Well, I've listened to this story 3 times now. Well, 2.5. So the first time I listened to it, I could only digest the first episode or so because there was so much being thrown at me. I was like, I can't do this tonight. I have to wait. And then I think it was about 6 weeks later, I restarted it from the start and then listened to it again all the way through. And then I think that was around about 2 months ago now. And then yesterday and today I re-listened to the whole thing. I think the Chimes of Midnight is one of the coolest puzzle boxes in Doctor Who. Like, the way it unfolds itself is incredible.
By the way, there will be spoilers in this review, so if you want to... I think it's like, what? $3 for us, so 3 NZ dollars, which I think is like £1.50 or something. Something ridiculously cheap on the Big Finish website. Do yourself a favour and go listen to it and then come back and watch this review.
And also, if you're looking to get into Big Finish, this is a good one to start with because there isn't a lot of story arc context in this. Maybe there's a small moment.
There's little moments here and there, but nothing. It's like watching one of Russell's series, and like watching series 1, and you see Bad Wolf referenced, and you're watching just an isolated episode. Like it's like that.
Yeah. It's in a lot of ways it's very isolated. But yeah, this is one of the coolest sort of puzzle box mysteries I've ever seen or heard in Doctor Who, and it's got this really, really interesting concept that changes as you go through it. So it evolves, and what you're expecting, it'll play out like a certain kind of Doctor Who story, and then it'll change into another one, and then another one, and then another one. It seems like each episode the story evolves and changes.
The clever thing is, the first couple of episodes are basically the same thing, but slowly it evolves and changes. Like, there's a lot of things happen where you're like, wait, did this skip back? Am I just listening to this again? What? What's happened? What? And then you go, oh, no, wait, that was different. What? It's a lot of...
It's a very complex sci-fi plot, and it's fantastic.
Oh, it's brilliant. All right, I suppose we'll dive into the review proper. What were your thoughts of the Doctor in this story?
Incredible. He's absolutely... I love the way he manages to second guess the story. Like, he's a step ahead of Charlie at every point. Like, he's sort of showing how smart he is by the way he managed to figure out the glitches and errors in the way that the story is trying to trap them in a certain, like, because the story is we'll get to the other characters, but basically this house is full of people, and the way that they speak, it's kind of off, like it's slightly off, and you notice it and like it's subtext at first, but as the story moves along, it becomes more and more obvious that there's something wrong going on, and the Doctor manages to figure it out, and he manages to hack his way through it. It's almost like he's trying to crack the code, if you will. And Paul McGann delivers it amazingly, just with great timing and his lovely voice. And yeah, can't say much more than that. He's just perfect.
He has such an understated presence. The Doctor you could probably closest compare him to is David Tennant, yet they're like opposites. Yeah. It's really hard to explain. Yeah, he's on the surface, he's like David Tennant, but he's much calmer. He's much more eloquent. He's much calmer.
He's very quiet. Very quiet.
But he's clearly the smartest person in the room. He's like an extension of McCoy at the end of his run, where we sort of, but not quite as sinister in this story.
Yeah, he's more sort of, he's got this kind of like, it's this quiet confidence to him.
He's sort of like what you would picture William Hartnell's Doctor would have been in his early years, is the best way I can describe it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's enigmatic and he's charming and cool, but he's not like he doesn't shout a lot. Like he's very focused.
And he always, even in moments of urgency, he's always like, stay calm and stick to the point, and I've got to make this point. And he always speaks with intensity, but he never screams, he never yells, he doesn't have to raise his voice. He's got this smooth as butter voice, and he's so rich and layered in his performance, and he does so little with it. In terms of, it's very understated, but what's there is brilliant. Yeah. McGann is a genius in the Big Finish run. Because it takes elements of what you saw in the TV movie, where it's this kind of Victorian, handsome dandy, and then just adds layers and layers and layers to it. And it's just like, oh no, he's still this potentially psychotic god. And he's smarter than almost anyone he meets.
Yeah, but it's way more understated than it was with McCoy.
Well, because McCoy was just like, I am secretly a god, ha ha ha, basically. Yeah. He's brilliant. I love McCoy, especially during that era. But McGann is
way more under the surface.
Well, the whole thing with McGann at this point was he was so understated, very calm, very collected.
And that's something that's incredible to pull off in audio form as well.
Oh yeah, and like in the climax, the way he defeats the enemy using words, because I love David Tennant as the Doctor, but often he would talk about like the power of words, and then usually he'd just be screaming and shouting.
Shakespeare Code has the power of words in it.
Yeah, literally, because the poet, like for the I like that concept of that those creatures are the Carrionites. Their power comes from words as opposed to science. It's just that's.
But in contrast, that's a Gareth Roberts episode, and that's different. It's so different to a Rob Sherman.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Both have their merits, but Rob Sherman is just exquisite. Yeah. Exquisite. But the way McGann is sort of, he gets literally positioned into the role of a detective in this story, because it's kind of presented at first a bit like a murder mystery, like an Agatha Christie murder mystery, and you're like, oh, okay, is this going to be like a bit going in that direction? Nope.
No, and then from there, you think it's a Agatha Christie murder mystery for a bit, and then it changes into a Stephen Moffat timey-wimey story. And then from there, it changes into a dark Rob Sherman, satanic, fucking, unbelievably just out of this world,
skin-crawling thing. It's, as we said, it sort of evolves, and it goes through different stages, and it uses the 4-part structure to the fullest potential, where it's not like, 2 parts are the same, even though the first 2 parts are very similar, but that's clearly intentional, and on re-listening you notice how the second one is a lot more nuanced than the first, and things start evolving and things start developing, and it's brilliant how each episode is so clearly defined. It begins very typically and very fun, and then you think, oh, it's going in this direction. Nope, it's going in that direction.
I think that scene where they walk out with and there's like the raspberry jam, like that's one of the coolest openings to a Doctor Who story. Yeah. Just like the fact that you start from nothing and you build it slowly with each plot element, and you start small with like the raspberry jam just to establish.
Well, even before that, we'll get into this proper, but the atmosphere from the word go is brilliant. You have Paul McGann's Eighth Doctor theme during this era, which is great, but then there's about 30 seconds of just ambient music, which is sort of like Christmassy music, but with a very sinister undertone, which perfectly sets up what this story is.
And then coming off that, you've just got like Charlie being Charlie, and it's like it's like you've got this warning, but now that you've brought up to where it's like, oh, we're traveling.
Oh, it's fun. It's a romp. Yeah. To begin with.
Yeah. Paul McGann. Yeah. Just to sum it up, Paul McGann's Doctor is written incredibly and acted incredibly. No criticisms.
No flaws, no criticisms. I have nothing bad to say against Paul McGann's Doctor in audio form. All right. Next topic is Charlie Pollard.
She is a really, really good exposition grabbing companion. Like, going around to all the side characters and getting the information we need from them. She's fantastic at that. Yeah, in a natural and relatable way, and she's also very human. Like the way she reacts, she's what's the word? She's empathetic. She's emotional. She's also funny, and but she's not like too important either. Like they don't present her as this great like.
They basically. Charlie's relationship with the Eighth Doctor, especially what they talk about in the final episode of the story, is what the Rose Doctor relationship was trying to be, and with Eccleston sort of was. Yeah. But then they took it in the romantic route. But in the terms of they need each other because he broadens her life and makes her life better. Yeah. She keeps him sane. Yeah. And there's that wonderful dynamic between the two. And India Fisher, is it? Yeah. India Fisher and Paul McGann have wonderful chemistry. Oh, yeah. They were just inspired casting together. It was just, she is so good and so likable. And the only reason she wasn't in my top companions list is because she never had an on-screen appearance. That's sad, isn't it? Yeah. But she's so good.
Yeah. Basically, to put it in perspective, is it's good because a lot of these Big Finish stories, especially if you're jumping in, are quite complex, quite adult, and also they're targeted at a more sort of niche audience. So if you're jumping in and also you can't see anything, it can quite be a bit bewildering, like trying to listen to these stories. But her character is actually really easy to latch onto.
She's a really good heart, like the pulse, the human pulse in the middle of all this insanity.
And that's what a companion should be, to be honest.
The audience perspective. Yeah. Especially with an enigmatic Doctor like the Eighth.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and I know we're sort of jumping ahead a bit, but like, there's that scene where, I think it's in episode 4, it's intercutting between the Doctor talking to the sentient house, but she's talking to, I believe it's Edith, and Edith is saying things to her like, I need to either kill you so that you're dead or keep you alive, but I need to know which one is which.
I need to know, are we alive or are we dead?
Are we alive or are we dead? And like, it's such a great sort of like, Charlie's like, well, what do I do? Yeah.
And then later on, Charlie starts questioning her own reality. She doesn't know if she's alive or dead because of the power of this entity that they're facing, and the fact that it's all spurred on by Edith committing suicide is, I've got to kill myself to save you.
And basically, to sum it up, Charlie played the companion really well.
Perfectly. Yeah. She just wonderful. Wonderful.
Because it's Rob Sherman, it's just like Rose and Dalek. Like, she played the perfect human companion role.
Rob Sherman is possibly the best companion writer.
Possibly.
Between this, Scherzo and Dalek, and Holy Terror with Frobisher,
Adam Mitchell.
He's the worst companion writer?
Yep. No.
That's more. Opinions. House members. We shall start with Edith Thompson, the scullery maid.
Oh, her character went on a massive arc in this one, across timelines that are looping, she had a character arc, which is crazy. Yeah, she was fantastic. Like, the fact that, like, the mystery around her as well was really good. The fact that she kept on dying, we didn't know why, and we didn't know how, but then the way it's unfolded and revealed that the fact that she committed suicide, it's horrifying. Yeah. And then the fact that the story ends with her, like,
It is the best example of a schmaltzy ending done well.
Yeah.
It's an optimistic, like, you are important.
It's like Christmas special ending.
It is this you are important message done so beautifully.
Yeah.
And it's like a suicide prevention message as well, which for Doctor Who, that's when Doctor Who deals with important messages and it does it well. There's nothing like it.
And it's refreshing to see Rob Sherman do something really uplifting.
Well, because it gets so dark, but then he decided, okay, this needs to end on a positive and life-affirming note. Not everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows, but you've got to push through. Yeah. And he does it in such a beautiful and believable way, especially after everything these characters have been through. He just layers it, and it's wonderful.
And like that kind of ending is something we've seen so many times before, but he does it in a new and interesting way.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's wonderful.
Yeah, I think Edith is a great character, really well written and really well thought out.
For sure, yeah. She's the star of this episode. Yeah. The story.
Yeah. Except for maybe McGann, because he's just...
Well, yeah. Yes, but like in terms of the story, she's the pivotal thing in it. Yeah. She's extraordinary. Really, really good. Yeah. All right. Mr. Shaughnessy, the butler.
Oh, yes. I love that scene. The moment where I realized I loved this episode was when he's pointing a gun at the doctor, and they're like, no, don't shoot. He's like, I can't let you get in there. I'm so sorry. Pardon me, but I have to shoot you. Yeah. And then the doctor's like, well, you can't shoot me with a watch. Give it here. And he's like, oh, yes. Here you go.
Yeah, it's so good. And the fact that he sort of starts all as this very sort of stuffy, aristocratic, I'm better than everyone. I'm still a butler, but I'm better than all the other servants. Kind of. I picture the face of the head doctor, the head surgeon in Smith and Jones. Yeah. That's the kind of character I picture. And his sort of belittling of Edith plays a huge part later on in the fact that he believes that scullery maids aren't important and things like that. He's a wonderfully over-the-top character who comes to have a beautiful significance later on. Yeah. Really richly crafted. Love it. Love it. Mrs. Baddeley, the cook.
Mrs. Baddeley. Oh, she was the one making the plum pudding.
Oh, Christmas wouldn't be Christmas without my plum pudding. Yeah. No, it would not.
Yeah, I love the way how... Like I was saying before about Charlie being the one asking questions, she basically wouldn't answer anything until she had the plum pudding.
Yeah, and also, it just wouldn't be crisp. And there's things like that where, to begin with, it sort of seems like you're just, this is a Victorian setting, potential murder, and then she's like, oh, Christmas wouldn't be Christmas without my plum pudding. It just wouldn't be Christmas. Then someone else says, oh, Christmas wouldn't be Christmas without your plum pudding. It just wouldn't be Christmas. And then you hear it a third time and a fourth time verbatim every single time. And you're like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. Why do they keep doing this? This is clearly... Because everything else is written in such a natural way that when this unnatural thing happens, it sticks out like a sore thumb. Yeah. And the dialogue, like, deliberately starts planting the seeds in your back of your mind, like, oh, I'm uneasy about this. There's something more. Yeah,
I feel like she's the first, like, suspicion.
She's the first indicator that something more is going on. Yeah. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And obviously, just like her character, like, even if it's not a real character, like, it's so entertaining.
Oh, incredibly so. Yeah. Christmas wouldn't be Christmas without my plum pudding. It just wouldn't be Christmas. Frederick, the chauffeur.
Ooh, okay. Remind me who that one is, because
He's the one who, to begin with, it seems like him and Edith are in a romance, and then suddenly he says, I can't be with a scullery maid. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. No, that was great, because, like, they had this conversation where like
He loves her.
like he loves her, and then suddenly on a dime, like he has, as if he's bipolar, he suddenly hates her, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
How?
This is it's like you're in one reality, and then suddenly, where everything looks the same, you just shift into a different, almost identical, but one major thing's changed. It's incredible because it just happens on a dime. It's the biggest like swerve, and you're like, what? Eh? And then again, this is all building towards that what the fuck is going on here thing. The way the plot slowly unravels and it builds and it builds and it builds is just meticulously plotted.
Oh yeah, and it's an upward incline as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And just gets more insane and more tragic.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's just very so smooth. Yeah, no, like similar to the other characters, he just
He deliberately, to begin with, sounds like a normal human being, but then slowly becomes less and less of a defined character.
What I love about the writing of the side characters in this is that throughout the first couple of episodes, they're actually given their own stories, and they're actually quite well developed. But then it's revealed it's all a lie. But it's not disappointing. It's like you got an entire fictional story, and then
You got a whole fleshed out soap opera, basically. Like you got Downton Abbey, but then suddenly it turns out that they're all fake.
yeah,
It's like, what?
yeah.
It's
almost like it's I could compare to something like Bad Wolf, like where Jake, for example, thought it was going to be all about game shows, but then it wasn't. It was.
And then on top of that, when Rose got shot, and he thought she was dead.
Yeah, but then as soon as she's brought back to like you realize she's not dead, the Daleks turn up.
Yeah, it's just this constant momentum, this forward momentum of swerving without it seeming like
Not
it's
random swerving.
no. There's a swerving with a clear intention, and sometimes it comes a little out of nowhere, but retroactively those out of nowhere swerves make sense.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Is it's not like, oh, imagine if it just went in this direction and then this direction and this direction. To begin with, it seems really messy and weird. But with the full knowledge of what's going on, everything makes sense. And that is clever writing.
Yeah, you can tell that he wrote this backwards because he definitely thought of the end goal and then wrote backwards and did the twists in between to make sure that it all made sense leading up to it.
It's so meticulously plotted out.
Yeah. And yeah, the chauffeur definitely added to that, like, suspicion.
Absolutely. Because he was the first, like, Mrs. Shaughnessy. Was that her name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cook.
Yeah. She was... Oh, no, sorry.
Mrs. Badley.
Badley.
Yeah.
She was, like, the first indicator that something was a little awry, but he was the first, like, obvious, in-your-face... What?
Yeah.
Eh? What the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
He was the first big indicator of that.
Yeah.
And then going forward, it just became more insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What did you think about Mary, the lady's maid?
Oh, and she had her own, like, arc as well, because obviously, what was the line? She's like, I'm a lady's maid. And I think it's like the, Mr. Shaughnessy was, like, saying that she was going to replace Edith or something.
Yeah. And she's like, I can't be a scullery maid. Blah, 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 blah. And he's like, you are now. And it's...
Yeah, like this lady who's stuck in a position where she's being bossed around by the butler, and like that's a whole story in itself as well.
Yeah, again, it's sort of presented like Doctor Who into a Victorian soap opera or an Edwardian soap opera.
Yeah. What I love about it is that the way that these characters are brought up, it's like it's as if it was Cluedo, like Agatha Christie.
Yeah.
So like it's like, oh, okay, which one of these characters killed the scullery maid? No.
None of them did.
None of them did.
Basically, time itself did. Yeah, brilliant. Speaking of, Edward Grove / the Sentient House.
Yes. So it wasn't exactly a character, but it was. The actual house itself is the villain. And that's fucking awesome.
I have a feeling, based on this and other shaman stories, he fears parenthood. Like, the way that there's always this kind of like, you birthed me, you created me, you are my father. And then in Holy Terror, I don't want to spoil Holy Terror, but go listen to Holy Terror. It's one of the funniest and most disturbing stories you'll ever listen to. And then Scherzo, again.
Oh yeah, part 4. Yeah.
I mean, the cliffhanger of part 3, and then leading into part... I mean, the cliffhanger of part 3 has nothing to do with the parental thing. But that's fucked up.
Yeah.
It's so fucked up.
Yeah.
And then part 4 comes around, and it's like... it makes you...
If you thought It Takes You Away was wacky, you haven't seen anything.
Literally. Just... It's also one of the really cheap ones on Big Finish.
All the Rob Sherman ones are the cheap ones, somehow.
Because Big Finish are generous like that, I suppose, because... Do yourself a favor and listen to the Sherman range of both the 6th and 8th Doctor.
Oh, yeah.
So good. And it'll take a couple listens for you to really get it.
Yeah. Like it did with this story,
Yeah.
Chimes of Midnight. Yeah.
The more you re-listen to it, the more things are revealed to you, the more layers are shown, and it doesn't get messier on rewatch like something like a really clever Moffat script that he did during his own era, right? Where you rewatch and you're like, oh, that's kind of messy. Oh, that's kind of messy. But with Sherman, when you re-listen to it, you're like, oh, that's really good. Oh, that's clever. And it keeps building. There's just so many things there.
Rob Sherman is the opposite of surface level.
It's all subtext and nuance. He does nuance like no one else.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah,
The Sentient House. Yeah, I thought that was a neat twist. The fact that the murder mystery revolves around this house that is sadistically replaying time over and over and having this girl die over and over and over again. Almost like Heaven Sent in a way, which would suggest things, wouldn't it?
Yeah. There's a conspiracy that Rob Sherman ghost wrote Heaven Sent. Because Heaven Sent is a lot like Rob Sherman stories. Though normally Big Finish Rob Sherman stories have a lot more, like a much lighter sense of humor to begin with. And then they devolve into Heaven Sent.
I definitely thought that the twists and turns of this house being revealed as the villain is just so well done. And then in part 4 we get this confrontation between the house and the Doctor, and it reminds me of like the Satan Pit when he faces the Beast.
Absolutely.
Or like Tom Baker and Sutek. It's like that kind of confrontation.
Yeah.
All it needed was Gabriel Wolf. That's the only thing that was missing.
Yeah, but then again, the guy who did it was really good. All the cast in this are extraordinary.
Pretty much. Yeah, it was fantastic. And yeah, I don't know what else to say, really. It's just really good.
It's just so unsettling, brilliant, captivating. Because by the time...
And evil.
By the time you get to the 4th story, you're like... 4th episode, sorry. You're just like, oh my god, this is so draining in the best way. It just keeps throwing shit at you, and it's like, this is heavy, man.
Yeah, pretty much.
Really good.
Yep.
So, do you want to break down the plot?
So, as I said at the start, it's basically one of the coolest Doctor Who puzzle boxes. I love the way it starts with it's the raspberry jam, right? On the just the way that it's like, oh, the raspberry jam falls. Oh, you're bleeding. Your blood's everywhere, and then the raspberry jam comes back on the table or whatever it is. Yeah. Just like those small hints, planting seeds in your mind, and it's just like this cool, like small scale. Like it's the story starts small, like starts in a room where you can't see, which is something that Rob Sherman loves to do with Big Finish, is just utilize the fact that you're going into this blind, so let's make the characters blind and go from there. I think that's brilliant.
Big Finish should do a range, if there's a way they could canonically do it, is where Capaldi goes off and has a series of Big Finish stories whilst he was blind.
In the Veritas universe?
Yeah. That's a money idea, Big Finish. Get on it. Get Rob Sherman to write Peter Capaldi.
Oh, yes. Blind Peter Capaldi.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Fuck. I mean, he hasn't written any Doctor Who since, like, 2005, I think. So.
Because he wrote, like, one short trip. Because the short trips are, I think it's usually a collection of about 5 20-minute individual stories. They're not... They're their own isolated, usually involving a different Doctor.
The last time he wrote a full story was Dalek.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, the plot's just great. It's great for audio. It has...
Atmosphere coming out of its ears. It's just...
I just wish I could see it. I just wish I could see it.
I have such vivid images of my mind of how it's presented because it's done so well.
Yeah, it's like pseudo sci-fi historical gothic horror fucking just Doctor Who.
And the thing is, because it is just audio, it has the highest production values of any series of Doctor Who. That's the brilliant thing about Big Finish.
Yeah. But I think if it was visual, I reckon it would look something like Ghostlight. I reckon.
Yeah. In between Ghostlight and what's it called?
Which one?
Series 1, Mark Gaddis. Unquite Dead.
Or maybe Tooth and Claw.
Yes, that too. That dark, cold feeling.
Yeah. The gothic horror thing.
Like I can almost feel their breath, like seeing their breath coming out. It's, so atmospheric.
Yeah.
And the way the plot just unravels and it's stringing you along in one direction. And then it's like, no, here's another thing on top of that. And another thing on top of that.
The genre changes throughout, but it doesn't jar the story.
No, it's all illogical. Illogical, but cleverly structured illogic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Intentional illogic, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Go listen to it.
It's the best Doctor Who Christmas special.
Bar none.
Yeah.
Go listen to Stu Bagfield's review of it.
Yeah. Because I think day 1 of the Advent calendar, I did a ranking of all the Christmas specials. My number 1 was End of Time Part 1. This is way better than that episode. And this is better than The Feast of Stephen. Even though The Feast of Stephen's hilarious. But this isn't just like the best Christmas special. It's like it's a classic in its own.
Oh, yeah. It rises above being a Christmas special and just it's its own thing. Yeah. It's brilliant.
This would be like a highlight of any series.
Bar none. It's brilliant. All right. Writer Robert Sherman.
Flawless.
Haven't listened to a bad story. All of his stories range from great to perfection.
Yeah. Even the ones that I don't love, I still really like.
Yeah, for me, all of his weaker stories are great.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to them all, but all the ones I have listened to are great to brilliant to perfect. Yeah. He's just so good.
Yeah.
He takes ideas of Doctor Who and pushes them in a new twisted direction that's not for everyone. But if you like his style, it is the best version of that you'll ever get.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
All right, the director, Barnaby Edwards.
So obviously he would have been like the voice acting director.
And also I imagine the soundscape as well.
No, I don't think I wrote down the soundscape person. But no, I think the director would have more just
been the actors
and possibly just like putting it together in a way.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the soundscape, but like just deciding
the pace of certain, is the scene going to be played more aggressively? Is the scene going to be played more quietly? So on and so forth. Yeah. Finding the right structure, and he had a brilliant thing to work with and just made it fantastic.
Yeah, basically. And I wrote down some stuff about him, didn't I?
Dalek operator for New Who.
Yeah.
Was he the Dalek operator for Dalek? Do you know?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
All of New Who, I think.
Also acts in a bunch of Big Finish. He does the Cyberman voices, except Nicholas Briggs sometimes does that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's a bunch of Cybermen voices.
Yeah, they.
But only one Dalek voice.
Yeah. He has worked on Children of Men, Phantom of the Opera, The Merry Wives of Windsor, Sherlock Holmes, Treasure Island, Confessions of Dorian Gray, Hollyoaks, The Prisoner, The Avengers, Survivors, Hamlet, King Lear, Jeremiah, Born in Time.
Yeah, I believe he's a director and an actor as well.
A lot of Big Finish people are, I think.
Yeah, might I add, Children of Men's one of the most underrated movies I've ever seen. It's groundbreaking stuff. It's fucking miserable.
I'm not sure which version of Hamlet and King Lear he worked on, but I want to see them based on what he did with Chimes of Midnight. Yeah. Also, fun fact, Chimes of Midnight, as I'm sure some of you may know, is actually taken from Henry IV Part 1. So that's a little Shakespeare connection for you.
There you go. I don't think I had that in my trivia.
Yeah. I've heard the chimes at midnight, so on and so forth. With John Foster. Oh, also there's an Orson Welles film called Chimes at Midnight, which takes all the scenes of a specific character who's in 3 different plays and makes his own narrative around that, and it's brilliant. It's one of Orson Welles' best films. If you get the chance, it's not for everyone, but if you're interested in Shakespeare and classic literature and classic cinema, go seek out the Chimes at Midnight. That's a great film. All right, moving on. Music, Russell Stone.
It was awesome. It's so good. Perfect. Like the entire thing, like you said, atmosphere coming out its ears. Good lord. I want to find somewhere if it exists, just like an isolated music score for Chimes of Midnight.
If it doesn't exist, someone get on that.
It's so good.
He's composed for a whole range of Big Finish stories, including Red Dawn, Winter for the Adept, Holy Terror. Go listen to it. Stones of Venice, Dust Breeding, Primeval, Spare Parts. Go listen to it. The Sandman, Church of the Crown, Omega, Scherzo. Go listen to it. The Twilight Kingdom, Faith Stealer, and the Council of Nicaea.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Connor, what time is it?
Trivia time!
Hey.
Oh, it makes me miss Jake.
He'll be back soon enough.
Oh, he would love Chimes of Midnight, I reckon. He'd probably be confused if it was audio, but if Chimes of Midnight was a TV story, he'd love it.
He'd be salivating because he's a hipster nerd like us. Chimes of Midnight was the first time that a companion created specifically for the audio range was put onto the cover of the CDs and eventually the digital download.
Whenever someone says Charlie Pollard, I think of that cover from Chimes with her face on it.
Where it's got McGann and her face with a faint clock face around them, and also outside of Edwardian manner.
And also subtly, the way that they're put onto the cover resembles a lot of covers that you see of male and female, not necessarily sort of couples that you see in movies, like the way that they're placed. And I think that's a nice subtle
looking different ways, but right next to each other.
Yeah, I think they have it on one of the Attack of the Clones posters,
probably.
But it's way less subtle on that. It's literally, look! Anakin and Padme! Look at that!
Good thing to come out of that was the music.
Attack of the Clones?
Well, specifically Anakin and Padme's theme is great.
Oh yeah, all the music in the prequels is pretty awesome. I can guilty pleasure watch most of that movie, but yeah, it's a mess.
I'd watch it on mute, except I want to listen to the music, so I'd just listen to the soundtrack instead of watching the movie because it's shite. The cook, Mrs. Baddeley, is named after the actress Angela Baddeley, who played Mrs. Bridges in the ITV television series Upstairs, Downstairs, which is also set in a large Edwardian house. I'm not sure if it's a sitcom or a drama, but I've seen posters and stuff for it in DVD shops and whatnot. And I think there was a remake recently that happened in 2014, which is also set in a larger Edwardian house. Shaughnessy is named after the show's script editor, Alfred Shaughnessy. It is regarded by many critics and fans to be the holy grail of Big Finish.
Yep.
I would say in terms of accessibility and craft, yes. Yeah. But in terms of...
I think this is it's
the hook.
It's the same as those Moffat stories from the RTD era, when you know how those are considered to be the holy grail of New Who?
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah.
Like Empty Child Doctor Dancers, for example. That's considered to be one of the most popular stories.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Go seek it out. Conclusion and rating out of 10.
How about you go first?
All right. Incredibly atmospheric. All the actors are on top form. The music is wonderful. The way the story starts one way and is leading you that it's going to be this, and then it goes in a different direction and goes another way, and it's confusing and weird. But when you get to this bitter, twisted, antagonistic ending, which then leads into a very optimistic and beautiful and touching ending, everything makes sense. Everything falls into place. Everything clicks. Sherman is a genius and regarded as one of the best Doctor Who writers for a reason. This is monumental Doctor Who. It is essential viewing. If you want to be a fan and listen to as many facets of Doctor Who, the best of everything that Doctor Who has to offer, this is some of the best Big Finish has to offer. It is wonderful. I really don't have any flaws with it. 10 out of 10.
There you go. Yeah, Chimes of Midnight's a classic. It's one of my favourite Big Finishes. In fact, I'd probably say it's probably my second favourite behind Scherzo.
It's my third favourite after Only the Good box set together and Scherzo. Yep. Because I am a sucker for the War Master.
Yeah, obviously. I do need to listen to that at some point. I've already heard Beneath the Viscoid, and that's the Nick Briggs part of it.
Yes.
Yeah, Chimes of Midnight is a masterpiece. It's like it's a story that at first I was a bit bewildered by and a bit confused by, but it's one that's really grown on me greatly. Rob Sherman's a genius. 10 out of 10.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I guess we'll see you tomorrow for the final installment of the 2018 Genesis Avengers. I'm going to try that again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you tomorrow in the final installment of the 2018 Genesis of Androzani Advent Calendar with a mystery video that falls on Christmas Day.
Yes, your Christmas present will be arriving, and you'll have to wait and find out what that is, because no spoils for Santa. No. See you then.